Hello, everybody. Okay, I think the security guard's not going to let any more people in now. So anyway, well, thank you very much for coming along to our talk on Moneyball 2.0. My name's Tommy Doyle. I'm the General Manager of Elseveir's Science and Technology Book Programme. And I'm very, very happy to welcome three Moneyball players and libraries. Melissa Goertzen from Columbia. Melissa's the Collection Development Analysis and Support Librarian at Columbia in New York. It's actually just realized we have a whole New York state group here.
Except for southern New York, called New Jersey.
Oh, New Jersey, really? Oh, okay, sorry, I'm sorry. I've just made a massive clangor there. British, there we go. But Gracemary, Smulewitz, Collection Service Management, Collections Development Librarian at Rutgers, and Scott, the Associate Dean of Research and Scholarship at Syracuse University. So this is a follow-up from a big talk we did last year. We've, as a publisher, have been on this mission to try to bring more data and analytics into book publishing. And we've been on this sort of journey for the last 4 to 5 years, trying to make our content more accurate, more precise, and ultimately drive better outcomes for research, whether that's improving the speed of research, selectivity through the right information at the right time, or driving serendipity. We've been leveraging a lot of the big data and tools that Elseveir has under its wheelhouse, items such as Scopus and SciVal and the wealth of usage analytics that are available on Science Direct. And we've been using this to build our books portfolio and design our publishing programs over the last few years. When we were talking about this to a librarian several years ago, the librarian said, well, that would be really very useful for me. And could you cut your models at our level? And we thought, okay, how would that be interesting? And the librarian said, well, publishers and librarians are essentially in the same business. We're serving the same customer, the end user, the student, the faculty, the researcher. And we're trying to help them become more efficient and effective in their really important work that they're doing. And the data that we were using to help pick and plan our publishing models was actually very useful for a library in this context. So helping provide context around what's the research strategy of the institution, what's the online user behavior, what are the types of reference questions and questions that you're answering. And really, we found that it was a tool in a way that librarians could get a lot more better line of sight in terms of the behavior around content and ultimately try to buy with more confidence, manage more accurately, and be more efficient in their spend. This is really just, we realized that we were just on the tip of the iceberg, and as we started to talking to more and more librarians about this, many people were sort of struggling with this wave of new data, new ways to cut things, and we're on this sort of change journey from very much like publishing has been and still is, very much poet-driven to more quant-driven, and measuring and demonstrating the benefits of that. And so we had a talk last year with three real thought leaders in this industry who've each developed different types of ways to play Moneyball in librarianship. And we wanted to kind of update on how things have been going since the last talk, and hopefully can share and spread some new ideas about how we can bring data and insight and transparency into both publishing and librarianships and ultimately deliver better outcomes for the stakeholders we're serving. So over to Melissa.
Well, thank you very much for being here today, and thank you to Tommy and everybody at Elseveir for inviting me to be on this panel today. So as Tommy mentioned, I work in the Collection Development Department at Columbia University. So a lot of what I do is really behind the scenes. I monitor our budgets and make sure that what we're spending aligns with our goals and also different collection caps over the years. And also, a lot of what I do involves monitoring information needs and trends across campus, just to make sure that what we're purchasing aligns with research trends we're seeing and also general research teaching and learning needs on campus. And one of the big issues that has been on our minds this year is how to balance just-in-time and just-in-case collection development. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. So just to give a recap of my presentation last year, so I talked a lot about the different types of particularly quantitative data that I was collecting basically in order to measure what we would call in-game activity. So basically I wanted to find out how much value what we were purchasing was bringing to our user community and whether it was being used to support their research and learning needs. And a lot of this work was also used to set a baseline for future investigation. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. So last year, I really focused on some methodologies that had been developed just in order to measure return on investment in our content. And what I really did was I looked at our overall spending patterns, and I focused on where we were spending the bulk of our budget. And a lot of that involved some of our big deal purchases, as well as some of our big subscriptions. And over the last year, there have been massive transitions in our library system. We've had some retirements and turnovers at the administrative level. Our budget has been restructured a little bit. And just within the last month, our new university librarian has released a strategic plan that we're currently using to inform new collection development strategies. So right now, we're very much in the development phase for a lot of our strategies. And basically how I've been using the baselines that were developed in 2015 is I've been looking at some of the gap analysis techniques that Tommy developed at Elseveir. So basically looking at turnaway statistics, looking at trends in the curriculum and which way our researchers are headed. And I've been using that to look at the long tail of our purchases. So basically where we're investing money that they're not big ticket items. And I'm looking at, are there savings that we can draw there, and can we reinvest some of that money to better support the needs of our users? And I actually did a large-scale analysis of all subscriptions, print and electronic, in our system, and it resulted in a $300,000 savings that we've been able to pull, and we're reinvesting this year to better support the needs based on the analysis that we've been doing. So in terms of our current investigations, it's not just about return on investment anymore. We're also looking at the context around a lot of our materials and how they're being used. So just as a quick summary, some of my colleagues and I have been looking at search terms that have been entered into discovery layers as faculty and students look for materials. We've also been conducting focus groups and interviews with faculty and students just to better get an understanding of what they're actually using collection items for. And basically, what I've really found over the past 2 or 3 years is that our collection development activities are very much guided by intent of use. So we found that particularly when people are using materials for in-depth research or learning, a lot of times they're still relying on the print collection, and that's very much tied to continuous reading. So they're working with the text over a long period of time. And when they're preparing for teaching and learning activities, a lot of this maps to our electronic collections, and that also maps to discontinuous reading trends. So they're popping in and out of the text, looking for specific keywords, looking for certain passages that they can quote in papers or dissertations, that type of thing. And so as we consider intent of use, it's also helping us balance immediate and long-term needs. And we're keeping this in mind as we're developing strategies for just-in-case and just-in-time collection development. So basically what I've been doing is trying to tie all of our methodologies together in order to look at our collections and make decisions about when to purchase print or electronic, when we can rely on ILL, when subscriptions may be more appropriate than purchasing content in perpetuity. And so I've been working with divisions on individual levels and just really doing breakdowns of all their funds to figure out which percentage is going to print collections versus electronic, mapping fund codes to catalog records, to look at the percentage of items that are being designated to specific subject collections, and then also matching that up with usage statistics in order to get a better idea of the context around use and also return on investment. So in terms of future investigation, the university is becoming more and more interested on overall collection impact. So basically, we're trying to develop an assessment program that tells a comprehensive story about our collections. So again, just mapping collection depth indicators to intent of use. So basically dividing it up between, say, research and teaching and learning activities. I've also been mapping a lot of our fund codes to LC classes and subject areas. So this is demonstrating how collection development activities are monitoring information needs on campus and how we're building collections in response to that. And then on top of that, I'm starting to look more at citation analysis, publication analysis, and also course reserves analysis. So this can show impact. So, let's say with some of our PhD students, how many articles from our collection are they citing? How many ebooks are they citing? For publication analysis, how much research coming from our institution is being cited, in some of these big deal packages. And then, of course, for course reserves, the collection or the percentage of different subject areas that are supporting that teaching and learning and also being built into the core curriculum. So as I mentioned last year, it remains true and I think becoming increasingly important. Partnerships between publishers and libraries, I think, are essential to the success of collection development strategies. So I think a lot of the data that libraries can provide give publishers an indication of how materials are being discovered. Publishers also give us a lot of insight about how materials are being used, particularly for research purposes. And so I think as we continue to develop transparent relationships, together we can influence, what materials are published and then also what materials are being purchased and brought into libraries. So thank you very much. I've included my email, so feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Thank you.
And being so tall, I'll move this microphone. Maybe I'll hold it. Would that be? No, don't hold it.
Is that one?
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is good. Yes, well, thank you, Elseveir, for inviting me back. And last year I did talk about cybermetrics because this was entitled Moneyball. And cybermetrics, it was the application of statistics in analyzing baseball and the success or not of players and how to maneuver a team, and it was particularly relevant to the Oakland A's in a period of time. And so I feel like that is where we are. We're in the midst of Moneyball at this point. And what is the impetus for change is that obviously current difficulties in funding the needs of academic libraries and the universities that support them. Rutgers University, like many institutions, introduced a new budgeting model about a year and a half ago, and only in the last year have we really looked at the implementation of this budgeting model and how it impacts collection development and every other service that the library offers. The model is called Responsibility Centered Management, or RCM, and it's actually many institutions at this point have implemented this, some with other names. But from a Rutgers University Treasurers Town Hall meeting, I will take this quote: the objectives of this type of budgeting is a budget model promoting financial responsibility at a unit level, which can be the library, but it actually means, in our circumstance, the different, what they call universities. We've asked them not to use that term because it does affect licensing, but we have multiple campuses, et cetera. And that it works most effectively in an environment of transparency and accountability. It's a tool that academic leaders have responsibility for using the system to advance the missions of the university. And I'm going to hold off explaining what this slide means, but with the impetus of RCM, or responsibility-centered management, we are totally restructuring the libraries according to the needs of the different units that are at the university. We are moving people into central operations and other services, evaluating them, and to see where they should be positioned to be the most effective and financially transparent. So a lot of what is happening is based on budget. But I'm showing this slide because I think it has tremendous impact. And it's actually a slide that I took from a presentation that we gave on Wednesday at a pre-conference. And Steve Bosch of the University of Arizona and I were talking about budgets and used this slide to show why libraries are really trying to change to meet the budgetary needs and why they're performing such extensive analysis. And if you look at the green line, it represents serials inflation from 1996 to 2012. They have increased 247%, right? So that's sizable, and we're not issuing a blame, but it is a fact. This is what the increase has been. And yet, for the total expend at universities, they have only risen 160%. Whereas if we look at the library expend, which is the red line, their increase is at 61.3%. So you can see this tremendous gap in finances of, over the course of this many years, it's $4.5 billion. So this is across all libraries. We're not just talking about Rutgers, obviously. And so then if we're looking at the University of Arizona, they kept parallel for a period of time and then fell off and rose a little bit. They really implemented RCM as well quite a while ago. And they've kind of kept a level spend, but they still have this tremendous gap. And I'm quasi-embarrassed to say that the purple line on the bottom is Rutgers University. And you can see that we really have been below what we've needed to be in order to keep up with collection development. And one of the reasons is that for the last 6 years at least, we have not received any inflation increase. Our budget has stayed flat, so therefore it's comparable to a decrease in spend. But we can't just cry poverty. We have to look internally to see and analyze how we're using our money. So that was the impetus for a lot of our changes. So how has this new model been applied to the library system at Rutgers? We've restructured so that multi-campus complexes reflect the financial responsibility of each unit. And as I mentioned, we actually have been moving people around and different services actually around to reflect these changes. Activities at the libraries within those units are appropriately aligned with the financial responsibilities of the unit. Staff and faculty are aligned with the same financial responsibilities. Restructuring so that collection development as a central operation includes analysis for all. And in so doing, we have created a collection development department, which we did not have in the past. We had an AUL, an associate university librarian, who was represented collection development, and then there were operations within technical services to support that collection development. And our department, which was called at the time and last year when I was standing here, distributed technical services, took it upon ourselves to start an evaluation process. We started looking at disciplines that we were funding, and collections, broke every collection down by discipline, and looked at, of course, the obvious cost per use, things like that. And we knew that there was more to do, much more to do. And I'm very impressed with what you're doing, and you're giving me more ideas of what we can do. But the idea within our new department, which is collection development and management, we have analysis, ILL, and a lot of other operations that we are responsible for. And the department specializes in the skills for electronic resources in particular, because that's our biggest spend. It's 88% of our total budget is spent on electronic resources. And then marketing and advertising that has to take place, and creating a story that makes sense when we approach administration for funds. In the past, we have said we don't have enough funds. And in essence, no matter what white paper we wrote, what we did, it essentially said we don't have enough funds. But we're spinning that in a different direction and saying these are the things that we do well. Here's the statistics and the data to support what we do well. Here's where our use is, and not just use. These are the departments that use these products and the use of those products, et cetera. And that story resonates much better with the administration than saying you're underfunding us. So, as you can imagine. So you do need to have extensive data that can create that well-designed story. So to market to the libraries, and marketing the libraries is both an internal and external affair. So we're marketing the libraries to our community, our library community, and we're marketing it to the university and then outside the university. So it's a big challenge, and it's a big change. So a very simple thing that we've done is we had created for every package, and I think I demonstrated this last year, by discipline, by cost per use, in one spreadsheet where someone could look at that discipline and see every package that was supported, every title that was supported, and the cost per use. What this represents is we've isolated a particular package, and we've looked at the titles that are particular to a discipline. How many titles are represented in accounting or in agricultural studies? And what is the usage of that content in comparison, in a ratio, compared to the total use of the total package? And how many titles are there? And what we're adding to this, to correlate all of this information into a story, actually, is what are the departments that these disciplines support? What is the level of education in those departments? And the degrees shared. And share this data with the communities that we're serving to show them how these products, and are they appropriate? And what can we do if we need to make changes? The other component, I think, which you touched on earlier, was where is the use coming from? Or who is using what, and how are they using it? So we are starting to evaluate the tools that we've purchased in the last few years to see where that use is coming from, and what are the top 10 resources that are being used. And are they from discovery services? Are they from A to Z lists? Or how much is coming through the link resolver? And analyzing that data in a cohesive way so that adds to the picture for collection development. Also, as I mentioned, last year ILL was a department or a division of access services. And as of last Monday, they're part of my department, or part of collection development. And we had evaluated, we extracted 3 years of ILL activity. We divided it into categories for requests from material that had perpetual access, that were archive back runs, et cetera, and then current material, and then absolutely very recent publications based on dates. And then we looked to see who these publishers were, what was the cost or the repetitiveness in a time frame. Were these requests for the same article over a period of years, over a period of months? What were the frequency of requests? And also, what were the biggest publishers where there were requests? And would we consider buying subscriptions? Were there alternative ways to get that material to have it in time? And we have implemented a commercial product to supply material quickly for current material that patrons are looking for. And this type of analysis is going to be much more extensive as we move forward. We're also looking at monographs in the same way that we've been looking at serials. So there's a lot of analysis that's going on to really form a picture for us now and then to compare that over the years to see trends, et cetera. And it's something that hadn't been done. So since last year, since I was here last year, we are participating in collaborative purchasing, and we've been members of 4 consortia, but we are doing much more collaborative purchasing than we had been doing in the past. We also have participated in a DDA and a PDA, demand-driven, patron-driven acquisitions, and we have become members of a shared print repository. And the fact that shared print repositories have grown tremendously, I think, is an indication that libraries recognize that we can't own it all, we can't store it all, we need space, and we need to participate collaboratively. It's much too expensive to try to do otherwise. We also talked about last year evidence-based procurement, and this year we are participating in an evidence-based purchasing for monographs. And monographs have suffered through this tremendous budget deficiency. So we're really looking at very, I would say, creative ways to purchase monographs and also to help the humanities and foreign languages, which seem to drop off because everything else is taking up most of the budget. We did subscribe to an ebook collection that had 147,000 books, and everybody was delighted to see that. And we've isolated all ebook activity, and we're starting to incorporate that into our picture. And we've learned through years of evaluating encumbered and not paid, and that means how much money at the end of the year do you have for we're a state institution that you haven't spent, so that we could take advantage of end of calendar year purchases where publishers are really, that is the end of their fiscal cycle, and it's a very good time to negotiate purchases. And we're trying to form an average that we can spend at that time of the year based on what is left at the end of every year, using that as an average point. And we're also extensively buying e-journal back files. One of the issues at our institution is there's not enough space for studying. So we're looking at tremendous weeding projects and compilation of journal runs, et cetera, to create this tremendous space for studying for students. And I think I've mentioned that we're very large, and we're over just about 60,000 students at Rutgers. And I've mentioned that we've incorporated ILL into collection development, and we're requiring a lot of analysis from them in order to evaluate how we should proceed and what we should purchase that's in ILL. And we will be evaluating the success of all those changes after by next year to see how we have improved the budget situation and what we should also incorporate beyond that. And I've gotten some ideas from the talk today. And I think that's all I have to say. So my email is here in case you have some questions. Okay, all right.
I'll just put this down.
Oh, yeah. You can see over there.
Otherwise, I'll get a little feedback loop going or something there. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about, follow up here, and I'm going to touch a little bit on stuff that Gracemary said and also Melissa, so there's some nice continuity going here. Well, what we did in the last year, we talked about developing a strategy, using all of this data. That's what we want to do. We don't want to just be reactive. We want to be proactive. We want to have some outcomes in mind and drive towards something. And the gap analysis, the Moneyball by another name, is this. Looking at large-scale statistics and trying to discern trends, trying to discern where's your weakest area, and is that weakest area something that you can fix? And if you're going to fix it, are you going to fix it in the short term? Are you going to fix it in the long term? Are you going to let it go and go somewhere else? I mean, you're going to choose to invest in something, and where your priorities are, say, reflect on they should reflect on what your weaker areas are. So that's the big picture about what we think of gap analysis anyway at Syracuse. Now, our biggest challenge in the last year, this looks like a beautiful library, and it is. It's our Carnegie Library. It's about 10 years old at this point. A few years ago, we redid the reading room portion. That's all nice. But if you go behind there, there's no way to really get a decent picture of this, but behind the large openings there's a 7-level cast iron structural stacks. They're part of the structure of the building, and that looks terrible back there. It hasn't been touched yet. All of the stuff behind what you see there. So we had to redo that this year, and we're prepping for it. Actually, we're going to do the real work next year. To redo that means we're going to lose some collection space. We had to take out about 1/3 of the collection that was there. And then when the workmen come in next year to actually do it, everything goes off the shelf. Everything, because you can't repair shelves and you can't repair floors when you actually have stuff sitting on them. So we couldn't do anything with journals. We've already had all the journals out of here. We put the journals from this building in storage about 5 years ago with a few rare exceptions. We had about a little over 200,000 monographs still left in it. And we probably needed to get down to somewhere around 140, 150,000. Number was fluctuating as architects came back with various things, renderings. They're bringing the stacks up to code, because believe me, what was code in 1907 is not code in 2016. So all sorts of accessibility issues, all sorts of code issues. It's going to be glorious when it's done, but it's going to take a lot of analysis to what do we move out of that place to drop by that large of a percentage, particularly when we don't have the easy out of print journals anymore. So we had a lot of decision points going on here. What can we take out of the collection entirely? And presumably, if we take it out of the collection, we're going to move it to a just-in-time kind of scenario where, well, if somebody does decide they need this thing after all, we're going to be able to get it somewhere else, probably pretty fast. What's used? What's not? Where are the gaps? Is it a strong collection already or a weak collection? Is this thing used or is it moribund? Do we move substantively and almost entirely towards replacing print with online, or incrementally? Because after all, we have a deadline here. This isn't sort of a long-term, well, let's work at it over the next half decade or so. There is an active timeline where stuff needs to be out in order to prep, in order to know what we're going to take out in box, because we want to separate anything out that we're going to deaccession. We don't want to take that off, box it, move it back into the building, and then deaccession it next year. That doesn't make any sense. We're not going to move stuff more than once if we can help it. The other thing, though, however, with doing a building refresh is the stacks aren't going away. This isn't space we can repurpose for learning spaces or offices. These stacks are part of the building structure, so they're going to be there, and there's going to be collections on them. So we're not just going to replace everything with online, but if we invest this money, and believe me, it's a large investment to redo the rest of this building, we want those collections to be used. So we want stuff that represents both our historical depth, but also speaks to our current strengths in research and teaching. That complicates things a little further, too. This is not just okay, let's shrink the collection's footprint and turn it into something else. So we have to maintain an on-shelf vitality. At the same time, we're reducing the footprint and trying to grow online. So, of course, data is hard. This is just getting the print data. But now imagine trying to match up the gap analysis for online usage, where we're weaker, where we're stronger, what kind of things have been used in print, what kind of things haven't been used, where do we discern our research directions going, not in 1 or 2 years, but a 5 to 10 year horizon probably. We're trying to marry these things up, and of course it's hard enough when you're just working with online resources. Even with things like Counter, we still have an apples and oranges situation. That was multiplied. We didn't just have apples, oranges, we had apples, oranges, bananas, and pomegranates in this kind of thing. So we had a group of people, and happily I wish we had Melissa there. We had some very strong people analyzing this, but they all had other jobs. We don't have a full-time collections strategist. We have some people who are wearing that hat part-time. We're working on this, and we charged a team to work on this over a span of about 6 months, this entire problem. So what I'm doing today is sort of boiling down some of the things that they came up with and discerned. I'm not going to give you numbers, just sort of some of the takeaways. They worked very, very, very hard. I have a 30-some page report sitting back in my office that was the result of their work. So one of the things we looked at, well, we're still growing in print. Again, it's not an entirely online situation by any means. This library, I realize I didn't say what it is. It's the most accurate way of describing it is it holds Q through Z. Q through Z inclusive. That means mostly STEM, but not exclusively STEM. There's also photography, crafts, military and naval science in there. Inside of military science is national security. There's information science, which includes library science, photography, public health. A lot of different departments are touched by this stuff. It's very easy at first to say, oh, it's all chemistry, physics, math. No, it's not. No, it's not. Now, that growth is steady, but the amount we're acquiring online that touches those areas dwarfs that. We acquire more than 2,500 e-volumes per year that would touch and support these areas, no question. Almost all of the series were switched at least within the last 5 years to online. We are looking at e-preferred we have an active and robust approval plan still for print, and we're moving portions of that to e-preferred. We're not doing DDA in this area. We are doing DDA elsewhere, but not in this area yet. So the question was, well, are any of those options at the bottom going to solve our challenge? Are they going to give us what we want, the right representation, the right mix? Some of the choices we had on the E side, again, is there a package? Is there something we can buy that would give us enough linear footage or enough volume? And we're talking, again, anywhere from 40 to 70,000 volumes. This wasn't a small stakes sort of thing. But most of these things, even if we had bought back files or packages, we didn't see enough replacement from that. The things like DDA or evidence-based are moving forward. They're not moving backwards, so they're not going to solve our problem immediately with how do we take out 70,000 volumes. So we had too many decisions to make sometimes, and while choice is often a good thing, sometimes it's just overwhelming, particularly when you have a short-term horizon to actually come up with a series of actionable recommendations. So again, this just-in-time versus just-in-case. This came down to sort of, I think, one of the guiding mantras behind the project. Well, if we go with front-list packages, turn everything over to E, that's really much more of a just-in-case. We're getting a package after all. If we do back files, that's still a just-in-case. We're buying it based presumably on turnaways or historic usage, but we're acquiring the whole kit and caboodle. Deaccessioning, that's just in time. That one took us a little bit more thinking to say, yeah, deaccessioning is just in time because we're relying on the goodness as what was the movie? Blanche Dubois in what was the movie? Streetcar Named Desire. That's it. She said, "Where will you rely on the kindness of strangers?" Meaning other libraries. They're going to still have those books somewhere. DDA, of course, is the quintessential just-in-time model, so we rely on that. But that only moves us forward. And we have a high-density storage facility which was rapidly filling up as well. So we had to make some real strategic decisions there too. So the goal was to refresh the space, including refreshing the collections. Again, buying packages wasn't a viable option the whole way through. We couldn't replace everything, particularly photography, crafts. These things see really, really, really high usage in print. No questions asked. So we want to refresh the building and refresh the collection, and we want people in those stacks. We want the continuing use of it afterwards, and in fact, we want to grow it. But at the same time, we also recognize that we've got to grow. We're mostly growing online. So We did use gap analysis for both our online and print to the extent we could with the data we had. That's important to bear in mind, to the extent we could. The strategy parts are in italics. The outcomes are in bold bottoms. We managed to give ourselves 10 years of growth space. The average publication date of what's on the shelf in the entire collection, over 200,000 volumes, shifted by 7 years. In certain areas, it shifted by over a decade, to the more recent date. So we would shift from what's the average date of publication on a shelf. In some areas, it went from something like 1980 to 1992. In other areas, a little bit less. What we're going to do is maintain our essential historic collections in storage, but we're going to use online more speculatively, more in an arthroscopic fashion to target the high gap areas, because that's when we can build things at scale. We can fill gaps at scale most readily by pursuing E strategies. And then we build steady state in print, and the two of them will complement each other. And then the other part, what I didn't have on here, but I'm so glad Gracemary mentioned this, is the question of shared storage. Literally this fall, within 1 hour, on one day, we had invitations from Hottie Trust and the East Project to say, are you interested in being part of shared print? Now, either one of those is an excellent option. Either one of them is going to take a ton of analysis. Having both of them, that's a real choice there, too. Do we go with both? Do we pick one over the other? Why? Which one? We haven't solved that one yet. Maybe we'll be back for Moneyball 3.0 next year to talk about, well, how the heck do we add shared print into this? Because right now, we're just doing, yeah, that's right, batting average. Right now, we're just talking about one institution by itself, but when you amp this up to across dozens of institutions, the challenges become even more robust, and the strategy has to be developed ever more carefully. So, and now I'll conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, Gracemary, Scott. Really diverse set of approaches and analytics to suit some pretty important, challenging, and exciting decision making. And it's great to see further examples of bringing more data, transparency, and insight to drive decision making. I think we only really have time for probably one question because we're right up against it and I can see people starting to come in.
So make it a really good one.
So does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? Okay. Well, we'll be sharing out the slides as part of the Charleston decks. So if you have any questions for me or for our speakers, please feel free to reach out afterwards in the hall or directly via email. And thank you very much. And I hope, wish you the very best with your Moneyball activities and librarianship for the rest of this year. And I hope you get to drive some great outcomes. Thank you.